If
Yeah.
you went there, would you look?
Where's your reference point as a scientist?
But we did have a skinful in the bar the night before.
I thought you just read me the Ladybird version of the book.
It would only know if it goes, it hasn't got any
I'm
bollock.
going to be like,
Oh my God!
Nessie's an alien. She's been here for donkey's years. Leave her alone.
Is known for its grunge music.
So hello and welcome to the Average Joe Conspiracy Show podcast. My name is Adam and today John and Mark join me for a little discussion about something a little Scottish. During each podcast I'll be inviting two guests onto the show where one of our guest theorists will bring a theory to the table and it'll be down to us to work out if there's something to it or if it's complete pony fudge. So how are we doing, guys?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm very good. I find myself every Monday listening to your NBS podcast. So how are you guys finding it? You sound like you're having fun doing it.
yeah, it's been good fun actually, and for a good cause, which is the whole reason it was started. So it wasn't for any other reason than to just help people and see if anybody wants to communicate about any issues or just have a bit of a chat. Really, we always do it, so why not record it and put it out there.
That is it. I mean, that was the idea, wasn't it? The whole idea behind it was that given the current global situation, and prior to that, the fact that in men aged sort of 45 and under, sort of down to the age of about 20 really now, statistically speaking, we're more likely to die by our own hand, which is just crazy than any other way. We are statistically more likely to take our own lives, and that's not cool. That's not cool at all. So I kind of batted the idea around for a while that I wanted to do a podcast or to try and do something to perhaps help blokes open up a little bit or feel like they could talk to people, you know. And as Mark said, I mean, Mark and I have known each other for years, and we do. Mark used to live a few doors up, and he'd come down, and we both of us would chat out our problems with each other. So, misses, cars, work, whatever it was. So we'd sort of work it through with each other, and it kind of made sense because we've known each other such a long time, and we have a laugh. We've got the same interests. I was like, Mark, I've got this idea for a podcast. Why don't we do it? Like, if Mark and I, through our incessant rambling, deals or helps one guy open up, changes his mind, makes him think twice about ending his life, then Mark and I have done our job. If we go on somewhere further down the line and help someone else with it, then do you know what I mean? That's just the gravy on the dinner. Do you know what I mean? Mark and I have done our job, or at least what we set out to do. And the more we can help people, great. The better. The more, the better. But and maybe if listening to Mark and I chat incessant rubbish for 40 minutes about whatever it is that I've concocted for that particular episode, or actually, to be fair, we've concocted for that episode, then and that triggers a little bit of a yeah, actually, well, they've had that. I've had that happen to me. Oh, and he said that he got around it by doing that.
It does come across very organic. As you said, it doesn't sound scripted at all. And you always know when mine's scripted because I always put on my James May voice when I read for some stupid reason, which annoys me. But I'll link all the information and bits and pieces in the description below. So anybody who wants to check these guys out, but I definitely highly recommend it. So anyway, without further ado, let's have a little conversation about your theory. I must admit, if I had 100 guesses as to what we were going to talk about tonight, I wouldn't have got it. And also, I like the fact that it's also Burns night, or as we're discussing this, hence my
Yes.
my attire this evening.
Yes, you're very
So-
very dapper.
If you want to get us started and let us know what we're talking
Yeah, I do.
about.
So, as I've mentioned, we are in yet another lockdown 2021. Seems to be a bit more severe and a bit more strict than it has been to a degree than the others. And I think it's a lot more stressful. And I think that plays into the fact that we're creatures that are designed to be out and about. We're not designed to be locked indoors all the time, or we haven't evolved to be indoors all the time. I didn't want to do the whole all serious, everything's bad. What I'm doing is I am picking the Loch Ness Monster. Yes. Yeah, come on now. Come on,
And
the Loch
tonight-
Ness Monster.
Oh dear.
And tonight, Matthew, I will be.
Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. Da, da. Yeah, so the Loch Ness Monster. Come on, that's awesome.
Yes, I was. It did bring a smile to my face. So, do you actually? Oh, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to let you just explain.
No, I know exactly what you were going to ask. Then.
It's probably the same question I was going to ask.
Do you actually, honestly believe in the Loch Ness Monster?
Yeah.
The flat out simple answer to it is absolutely.
Wow.
No.
Oh, okay.
But I have found, I'm not going to say overwhelming evidence because it's not at all, and 99.99999% of it has been debunked. But those people are all idiots because what they're not doing is they're not keeping the magic alive, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a different view. I'll definitely think things like that are definitely a good thing to think about. You think about Sasquatch.
Yeah, man.
It's a cool thing.
Like-
cool story.
I guarantee you, I will go and sit at the side of Loch Ness for 4 hours with a pair of binoculars. I will do it, especially having read into it and seen some of the photographs of the scenery and bits and bobs.
I don't think it's real because there's no vivid picture. There's no actual like evidence other than like minuscule, blurry, pixelated pictures from miles away with all sonar and etc. that they've got these days.
Yeah.
You definitely have something. I mean, someone would be hanging their dog off of a fishing rod trying to catch this thing, but that people are too curious not to have found that by now.
That's the thing. If you went to Lake Windermere and you just saw a disturbance in the water, you wouldn't think anything of it. But you're walking down, past Loch Ness, and that's it. You immediately think it's going to be the Loch Ness Monster.
The story of the Loch Ness Monster, I think we all think of as being a modern thing, and it's not. So going back to the 6th century AD, there was a holy man, a man by the name of Adnaman or Admanon, whatever his name is. Anyway, so he was telling the tale of a saint. Saint Columba was an Irish monk, and he was doing holy work, wandering around in the land of the Picts, which was an Iron Age group of Scots or Celts. As he was out and about on his travels one day, he just happened to stumble across a group of Pects who were burying one of their own. And when he asked what had happened, he was told that the man was swimming across, and this is where it sort of triggers a little bit or goes a little different. He was swimming across the River Ness, not Loch Ness, the River Ness, when he was attacked and dragged under by a water beast. Now, when you go back that far, there are an awful lot of tales and bits and bobs in mythology that talk of the River Ness and Loch Ness having water horses.
Kelpie, it's called. The water spirit that
There you go.
lures people by its cuteness and goes, "Oh, jump on my back," and then the kids jump on its back, and then it sticks to them, and they go to the bottom, and it eats them.
There you go. So that's exactly what happened on this fateful day. So, so Saint Columba, being a very holy man of God, him and his followers, a particular follower who was Luin Moku Min. he ordered this chap to swim across the river as bait.
Right.
So this chap, Lewin, swam across the river. As he did so, they witnessed bubbling of waters around him and a beast come from underneath. At this point, Columba was somewhat handily in a boat paddling really fast behind him, I assume. He picked out his cross and commanded the beast to get back and to be gone and to be banished. And the beast dived to the bottom of the river and was gone. That was that. But it was really brought into the forefront in the 1930s, and in 1933, a journalist who was a water bailiff for the Loch Ness. So he was a water bailiff and a journalist at the New Inverness Courier. He reported on a story who was, or it was reported to him by a woman called Adie McKay, that her and her husband had been travelling along the side of the loch when they noticed a disturbance. Something monstrous appeared in the water in the distance, and she reported that she'd seen this crazy thing and shouted. I think it's the first recording or written recording of someone referring to it as the beast or the monster. Now, this carried on as a bit of a trend through the 1930s, really. This chap, Alex Campbell, is the journalist.
Right.
It was reported to him and the Inverness Courier several times throughout the 30s that incidents like this had happened. Bit of a weird one with Adie McKay. So in the late 1980s, she was interviewed again. She said that she remembered as a child being told stories of the beast. So potentially could be a bit of a hoax.
Why do you think the Loch Ness Monster is more famous than, as we've mentioned just a second ago, the Kelpie, the water spirit?
Because
they're
when
both...
was the last time anyone bought you a plushy Kelpie or a plushy water spirit?
But,
Sounds like something out of SpongeBob.
It does. No, but that's the thing. I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's modern society. Like,
Yeah.
we love a story, or we love a tale, or we love a fable.
The Ladybird version of the book, The Loch Ness Monster, John, if I'm honest. $3.99 on your local bookstore. You've literally just read it to me.
It gets better, though, because in the 30s, people were obviously on a lot of drugs. So the first reporting of it is the 2nd of May, 1933. Then on the 4th of August, they published another article from a holidaymaker. So a chap named George Spicer from London. He stated that he and his wife had been driving around the loch several weeks earlier and had described the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I've ever seen in my life, trundling across the road toward the loch with an animal in its mouth. Right? He described it as having a long neck which moved up and down in a manner of a scenic railway. But if there were any feet, they must have been of the webbed kind. And for as a tail, I cannot say, as it moved so rapidly. And when we got to the spot, it had probably disappeared into the loch.
Every country and region in the world has its own mythological creature. But you got the Wendigo, which is the North American Canadian one, which is the from Native American term mythology. That would live in forests and eat humans and animals. You also have the Mongolian death worm. Which
is that like Tremors?
It is very much like Tremors. So it stands 5 foot tall, spits fire, acid, and electricity, lays eggs inside its victims, and they live deep underground in the Gobi Desert. You've got the Grootslang, which is South African. It's believed to be as old as the world itself, and basically
5,000 years.
So when it's a serpentine elephant, so it has it's an elephant with a lizard's tail and lots of tusks, and basically when the gods were creating animals, they put this thing together. They realized they put something that was too powerful, too cunning and intelligent, so they ripped it in half, and ripped them to bits, and that's where we get snakes and elephants from. However, one ran away, and if you find this in the desert, you have to bribe it with jewelry, otherwise it'll eat you.
Next time I go to Sahara, I'll make sure I take a pearl necklace or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Deity installed capitalism.
This one's from Japan. So this is the Goraguma, which is basically a giant spider woman, and they morph into beautiful ladies, go into the towns and villages and they lure men into caves and then wrap them around in silk and then eat them when they fancy it. And they can be found in abandoned caves, subways, and abandoned houses as well. And then you've got the Inuit version of a mermaid, Kalupaklik, apparently. Okay. And it's a humanoid creature that lives in the sea. It's female, has long hair, green skin, long fingernails, and it pops up to the surface when and steals children and puts it into a big sack. When you think of mythical creatures, Loch Ness Monster's got to be in the top 5.
Oh yeah, hands down, because she's got to be number 1, surely.
Well, Bigfoot, I reckon, is probably up there.
You reckon? Oh yeah, maybe actually. Yeah, I think probably more people have heard it. Yeah, but that's only because someone made a monster truck and called it Bigfoot.
I thought it was because of Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah.
Right. So in 1954, the crew of the fishing boat Rival 3 took sonar readings from the lake, and they reported a large object keeping pace with the vessel at a depth of 149 meters for a distance of 800 meters before losing contact. So they made further passes back over the area that they did it, and they couldn't find anything. Also, it was reported and shown on Apple Maps in 2014. When you zoomed in, you could see the silhouette of something underneath the water. Hey! How awesome is that? No, mate. Look it up, mate.
Do you not think that they would have put that there like purposely?
Do you remember seeing that Google Maps image where it looked like someone had been massacred and it looked like the body had been dragged? It turned out it was someone with their dog.
Yeah, it was the water, wasn't it?
Until that's explained to you, it looks quite savage.
Didn't it look like a proper murder scene as well? Like that proper body drag thing that you get in horror movies. Yeah, it did. I can't talk about Nessie and not talk about the world famous photograph. So on the 21st of April 1934, a photograph was published that was taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson, and he was a respected London gynecologist. We'll brush over the fact that he absolutely refused 100% refused to have his name put to the photograph because he obviously didn't want to be discredited. So it became known as the surgeon's picture.
Oh, that's why it was right.
Yeah, because he was the surgeon and he just didn't want his name put to it. It turned out was a toy submarine which was created by Christian Sperling. Sperling was the son-in-law of Marmaduke Wetherall. Okay, so this Marmaduke Wetherall bloke was a journalist who'd basically been discredited by the Daily Mail. They'd ousted him because he'd lied about finding Loch Ness Monster footprints. So
a journalist lying?
Yeah, I know.
Jonathan.
It's shocking, isn't it? Shocking. So to get revenge on the Mail, Wetherall concocted a grandiose plan. He, together with Sperling, who is his son-in-law, yes,
right.
Ian Wetherall, his son, who's apparently his only involvement in this whole photograph thing was that they sent him to the shop to buy some wood putty and some twigs. Apparently, the main body of the monster was a toy submarine from Woolies.
Excellent.
They got presumably a pot of pick and mix. They built this fake Nessie in order to get revenge on the Daily Mail. So they created it. They tested it at their local pond, as you do. You know, test your monster out, and then once they were happy with it, they took it to Loch Ness and let it float around. Took some grainy photographs of it. To make the tale even more absurd, Chambers, who was one of the guys involved, he was an insurance guy, gave the slides, or modern day equivalent would be the negatives, to his good friend Robert the Surgeon Wilson, who loved a good practical joke. Wilson then took them to a local chemist in Inverness to have them developed, which obviously sent it through the roof in Inverness and fueled up even more the whole Nessie story, which is great because I wouldn't be here talking about it today. And then they sent the pictures to the Daily Mail, who printed them believing that they were real. So, ultimate revenge dealt with, done and dusted. He's got them back. Old Marmaduke's got them. He's got the Daily Mail.
Just having a little gander at Loch Ness, LochNessSightings.com. And
Awesome.
this registers absolutely every sighting there has been reported. And this year already there's been one. In 2000 there were 13 sightings. Again, this is all backed up with photo. It would be pretty crap if you didn't have a photo, but photos and images and bits and pieces. 90% of them, it just looks like there's a duck on the water.
With all conspiracies, especially after watching your Area 51, right? With all of these conspiracies, everything's always shut down by science. I mean, like it should be, really. Do you know what I mean? Like you can prove that it's not real because it's just this thing. But
yeah,
I don't believe it. I think it's the Men in Black. I think they're like, no, Nessie's an alien. She's been here for donkey's years. Leave her alone.
Do you think Nessie's an alien?
Yeah.
Well, that
But to me, right? It's more likely that she's an alien than she is any prehistoric dinosaur creature. That she's some weird mutated thing that's scuppered in there from somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
if we're going to go, if I've got to pick a camp to sit in the crackpot camp of conspiracy theories, I'm going with Nessie as an alien, and she's supposed to be there.
So I think the dinosaur was called the Plesiosaurus.
Yes.
Which is the typical image you get in your head when you think of the Loch Ness Monster. This dinosaur was around during the Jurassic period and lived 203 million years ago.
Yep.
The loch itself is only 10,000 years old.
Yep.
So I think you have a point that she's an alien.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Or he, I
Yeah, or could be both.
It might not be a neck sticking out of the water. We don't know.
Mate, I'll tell you what, having looked at where some of that water comes from, there is no way it's what you think it is sticking out the water, because that's cold.
What other animals live in that water?
So
it's going to feed on something, isn't it? And it's got to live with something.
Yeah, I mean, the loch itself is full of life, but there are some incredible creatures that live in there or might live in there.
I didn't want to go into this because it even more disproves what I'm trying to argue.
So we'll start off with the European eel, which can grow up to 1.5 meters long, but it's believed that with mutations it could be a bit longer. So that lives in there. Although it hasn't been proven, it wouldn't be a leap of the imagination for something called a Wels catfish that lives in Europe. And basically, these things are huge. They're monstrous. If you were swimming, one of these came up to you, you would poo your knickers. And this thing,
you've seen Mark's watching list then.
And this thing can grow up to 5 meters long, but is commonly only 3 meters. And then you have the something called a European sea sturgeon, no relation to Nicola. No. And this sturgeon can reach up to 6 meters long. 6 meters long.
That's massive.
Wow.
6 meters is massive.
However, a New Zealand professor called Neil Gemmell, what he wanted to do was test the water, take samples from all around the loch and encode the information from it, and he can basically work out what animals live in and around the loch. The Wels catfish or the European sea sturgeon wasn't a part of the coding. However, he believes that there's something called a eunuch eel, which doesn't breed, it doesn't do anything, it just eats and lives. It must have to do some sort of breeding, but it doesn't have sex, I guess. I guess that's why it's called a eunuch eel. And this thing they reckon can grow up to 12 feet long and is massive, and they think this thing lives in the loch. This test also proved that there was no sort of prehistoric dinosaur or anything like that. However, 20% of the DNA or 20% of the information they've gathered has not been encoded, so it's unencoded.
And also, where's your reference point as a scientist, as a genealogist? Where's your reference point for dinosaur poop?
I think what they can do is an educated guess, so they can. How he described it is that he would know it if he saw it.
It'd
So
be unregistered DNA, wouldn't it?
That right there is definitely dinosaur shit. So that means Nessie lives in there.
So what do you reckon, Mark?
I'd definitely go with that based on the information you've just told me. It's got to be. It could be any of those. To be fair, that's like unusual in itself, isn't it? If you're walking around and you see something that size surface for air, you're gonna literally be like, "Oh my goodness, what on earth is that?" If you don't know that area and that those sort of animals live in that water, you're just gonna be like, "Oh my god!"
A couple of years ago, I stayed at the Jamaica Inn, which is
really?
the famous smugglers, the most haunted in England or the world or whatever. And you hear all these stories, and you just think, okay. And we stayed there. Whilst we were there, it was very rainy, and then it was very foggy. And then we go out and go for a walk and walk along the moors, and you can only see a couple of meters in front of you, and you think, now if I had read that, and now if I'd seen them stories, I would understand. So I think when people are in that sort of environment, I think their imaginations can really run wild. So we deliberately stayed in the most haunted room.
Awesome.
That was like in was it Ghost Hunters or Most Haunted?
Most haunted.
Yeah. So we stayed in the room, which is apparently supposed to make you to yourself. And even talk to the receptionist. It was like, we've had people on a weekly, monthly basis just get up and leave in the middle of the night. And obviously, you're going to think every single creak of a floorboard, every single thing, you're going to be ultra sensitive to, and you're going to be certainly not what you'd get in a Premier Inn. We didn't see anything, didn't hear anything.
Did you sleep well?
Oh, we had a cracking night's sleep.
That's what
very
matters.
good. But we did have a skinful in the bar the night before. But just imagine taking that pub back 100 years in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the moors with the fog and everything. That's where these stories come from, and you can really understand why. If you're going to vote this between 1 and 5.5, 5.5 being absolutely sold, 1 being not a chance, what would you give it?
I'd give it a 2.
A 2?
You got to keep the story alive a little bit, but it's not real, is it?
I'm gonna be really harsh with this and give it a 1.
Oh mate, you absolute. I bet you tell children that Father Christmas doesn't exist, don't you?
No, I emailed them.
If you went there, would you look?
No.
You wouldn't even look?
No. If I was there, I'd be there likely with my wife. She would point it out, and I'd be the smart ass ruining all the magic for everyone, and the kids would be crying around me.
Oh.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even go on like a Loch Ness tour, like on a boat out onto the water.
Oh, yeah, no, for the scenery and to see the odd mallard or two, but not a poxy.
Mate, you go to Kersney Abbey for that.
So what about if you saw this eunuch ill?
Well, it would only know if it goes, it hasn't got any box. I am
you would look.
Oh, 100%. This is one that I would love to be wrong with. I would love for one day there to be absolutely hard evidence.
I need to try and change you to a 2, because if you're going to look, you can't say a 1. If you're gonna look,
he's got you.
It's true, isn't it? And that's why I've scored it a 2, because I would look.
I would think it was anything else before I'd think it was the Loch Ness Monster.
I don't think you would. I think you'd get swept up with the hysteria of it all.
Yeah,
because like you said,
I don't think it's real in the slightest.
Like you said at the Jamaica Inn, if you were walking along in that dark, dank, misty area and you heard a strange noise, psychologically programmed into you, you'd go, "What was that?" Like, you can't help it.
Yeah,
you
but I'd
cannot
be
stop that.
worried about some sort of crazy naked guy with a knife
Or a pothole that you didn't see.
Box, I'm keeping it as a 1.
You mean it?
So that means that the Loch Ness Monster being real not in our hearts, but actually physically being something that you can touch, feel, and tickle, we score as a 3, which is very unlikely.
Oh, yeah.
You could have been unbelievable or impossible, but no, very unlikely.
I mean, to be fair, if I don't get the lowest score ever on the average Joe Conspiracy Show, I think it'll be a miracle in itself, which just goes to prove the magic of it. To be fair.
Excellent. So that's it then. Thank you so much for joining us. Will you come back on a later date?
Absolutely.
Yep,
Thanks.
I'm happy to pay you a visit, see what else
I
you
think
can come up with.
So excellent. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Please come back and join us again on a later day. So Mark, John, thank you.
Good to meet you.
If you've liked what you've seen today, please like, share and subscribe, and thanks for joining us.